My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be L.M. Montgomery, Video 10, Folk Tale 1, Mother and Father. That's L.M. Montgomery's mother and father. So here is my novel. This is the cover. L.M. Montgomery, I Gave You Life, a novel by John Passfield. Now, this is a photograph of the historical L.M. Montgomery in 1938. Now, in 1938, with another world war looming and her own personal problems threatening to overwhelm her, acclaimed Canadian author L.M. Montgomery begins to write what she's decided will be her final Anne novel. As she works on the new book, she recalls the days when Anne of Green Gables became a worldwide literary phenomenon and the dilemma that she faced at that time. Now, the dilemma was this: whether to write a series of novels in which Anne would perpetually remain the child the world had come to know and loved, or to allow Anne to grow to adulthood with all the agonizing torments of the one who had given her life, L.M. Montgomery. Now, we're talking about 3 novels. This is my novel, L.M. Montgomery, I Gave You Life, in which L.M. Montgomery is a character in 1938. Now, she is writing her novel, what will be Anne of Ingleside, in 1938, the final novel she has decided in which Anne will be a character. Now, as she writes this novel, she can't help thinking, in memory, of course, of the days when Anne of Green Gables was being written and published, the first novel in which Anne appears as a character, and which was so popular that she was given the opportunity to write more Anne novels and had that dilemma. So the dilemma's in her mind, even though it was 33 years before that she made the decision. Okay. Now, there are 5 folk tales in this novel in the mind of the main character. There are folk tales about her mother, her father, those are the 2 I'm going to read in this video presentation, herself, and of Matthew and Marilla. In this video presentation, I will read and then talk about the folk tales of the mother and the father of the main character, L.M. Montgomery. So let's go to page 4 then. This is the folk tale of L.M. Montgomery's mother. Page 4. Here it is. She was just 21 years old. She was lying in a bed. Her new young daughter was by her side. Her devoted husband was on the porch as the moonlight shone. Her husband and her daughter would be her whole life. Okay, from there we go to page 10, because there's one segment in each chapter of thought in the mind of the main character. So page 10 is the next one. Here we are. She looked down at the child in the crib. Mother, father, child. A scene repeated through endless eons of time. The general store would start to prosper. No matter what, they would be together every day of their lives. Then we go to page 18 for the 3rd segment of this folk tale. What will be my little daughter? What will she be when she grows up? When I am well, I will sing her lullabies, gather flowers to arrange in the vase, when the cough that I have in my lungs goes away. Okay, then we go to the next one, which will be page 26. Here we are. Black hats and black coats, black crape on every arm, black harness on the horses, black plumes above their heads, slowly wending one's way to the cemetery at dawn. That was page 26. Now we go to page 34. I've heard it said that if one's mother dies before you know her, that you end up hardly missing her at all. But this is not true. Life is never, ever the same. There's a hollow spot inside. You miss her every minute of every day. That was 34, then 42. You can see we're jumping about 10 pages of other thoughts, other imagery, to pick up on just these segments of the folktale of the mother in the mind of the main character. So, what did the little girl do without a mother? Well, she did what all the other little girls do. She grew up and went to school, learned her ABCs, ate breakfast and lunch and dinner, played with dolls, and grew interested in boys. But there was something inside that was just not there. Page 50. One tries to apply logic to this situation. This is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. This does not make sense. This is not the way things were meant to unfold. From page 50 to page 58. No one's mother should die before they have a chance to know them. No one should have to face their childhood completely alone. No one should have a scrape or a bump and have no mother to show it to. No one should have no memory of childhood lullabies. No one should have to feel so hollow, so deep inside. Then to page 66. But bitterness was not an option for the little girl. She carried on as if her heart was still intact. She had friends among her fellows. She laughed at jokes and sang songs. She went on picnics with sandwiches and a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Then to page 74. Everyone thought that she was a normal little girl. They were looking at her from the outside. 2 eyes, a mouth, a forehead. She laughs and sings like everyone else. There can't be anything wrong with this little girl. And then 84. So a mother dies of tuberculosis. Terrible things have happened before. People die like flies in plagues. Earthquakes open up and swallow villages whole. The little girl was not unique at all. Then 92. But the little girl was cursed with imagination. She was sensitive to all things in the extreme. She felt every single raindrop that fell on her skin. So loneliness was to her like being in prison. She looked out through the bars on the human scene. Then we go to 102. Eventually, the little girl grew into a woman of some 60 years, far beyond the age at which her young mother had died, and she could look back over the span of all those years. But she couldn't see her mother. Her mother wasn't there. She was still the little girl who had no mother, simply because her mother had up and died. From 102 to 110. So, what happened to the little girl? What became of the little girl? What did the little girl come to be? She grew up like everyone else. She married and had children like everyone else. Then 118. So that is the story of the little girl. That is the story of the little girl. The little girl who had No mother, the little girl who had no mother from the age of less than 2. The little girl whose mother up and died. And then the last one, the last segment of this folktale is page 125, 126. Okay. So the little girl kept telling herself that she was not unique. She kept telling herself that other people had learned to live with what she thought of as a terrible thing, had learned to put childish things away and become an adult, had learned to let scars simply be scars. What's a scar? If a warrior's arm can still heft the sword. Well, that's the folk tale of L.M. Montgomery's mother in the mind of L.M. Montgomery, the character in this novel. Okay, let's go back to page 4, right at the beginning, and look at the folk tale of L.M. Montgomery's father, as imagined in the mind of L.M. Montgomery, the character. Okay, the father. Here it is. There was a young man who became a father. He had married the perfect girl. They were both as young as can be, and so in love. They lived in a little cottage surrounded by woods and flowers and fields. A red rose bush bloomed on either side of the door. Okay, then to page 11. And the young man was always filled with infinite promise. He was a young man whose shining star was always bright, many fingers and many pies. His young wife was so in love. They were the perfect couple to everyone they knew. Then to page 19. And one day, his young wife gave birth to a little girl. He wanted to bring joy and comfort into her little life. His bosom swelled as he stood on the porch. In the moonlight, his wife and new daughter were the finest things in his life. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he thought of them. Then to page 27. So, what is a father? What does a father do? He sits by the fire reading his paper. He smokes his pipe of an evening. His little girl sits and plays on the rug at his feet. Okay. 35. Here we are. He loves his wife and young daughter. He wants them both to be as happy as they can be. He brings the firewood into the home. He lights the oil lamps in the evening. He worries when he hears his young wife cough. Then page 43. He walks behind his young wife's coffin in the procession. He holds his young daughter's hand as they walk along. A tear runs down his cheek as the coffin is lowered. He lifts his daughter up into his strong, warm arms and presses her tiny cheek against his cheek. He holds his daughter's arm as she waves goodbye to Mommy in the grave. Then 51. The father was good at many things. He told his daughter about his plans, how aware he was of such golden opportunities, how their little island was a little too small for his dreams, how he longed to make a fortune for her in the West. 59. And her father wrote her letters. He sent her stacks and stacks of mail, all about his good luck and his fortune, how much fun they would have when he sent for her, all about how he terribly missed his little girl. 67. And one day the father sent for his little girl. Come live with me in the West. We will hunt and fish and shop and do whatever we want to do. We will have our cake and eat it. There's nothing in the world too good for my little girl. Then we go to 75. Canada is a long, long country. One sits as the train chugs on for days and days. The rock and the trees flew by the window as she wrote and wrote in her diary. She wrote and thought and wrote and thought again on her way to her dream reunion with her dad. Then we go to 85. Her father was a very important man. He was often away from home. The Canadian West is a very large place. He had to travel for miles and days. She would sit by the door and wait for her father to come home. The father had a new wife. He had married a second time. Why remarry when you're so often so far from home? Why leave your little girl to live with strangers? She would sit and wait for her father to come home. Oh, this sounds like a cruel story. The cruel stepmother works her ill, but sometimes life echoes fiction. Sometimes fairy tales come true. Wicked stepmothers sometimes thrive in the everyday world. 111. Here we are. The girl went home. She missed the island. Time passed. Her father grew ill. He wrote her letters while he could, by the bushelful. Finally, the stepmother wrote that he was too ill to write. And that was the only letter the stepmother wrote. 119. What did his father think about as his very life was ebbing? About the fact that his wife gave birth to a little girl. How his bosom swelled as he stood on the porch in the moonlight. How his wife and new young daughter were the finest things in his life. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he thought of them. And then the final segment in this folk tale is this. The girl would often dream about her father. She always had such pleasant, cheerful dreams. Her father was always a man of infinite promise. His star would always shine as bright as bright. He would press her cheek to his in every dream. Well, so those are the two folk tales in the mind of the character Ellen Montgomery, one about her mother and one about her father. We humans think about ourselves all the time. We think about ourselves consciously, and we think about ourselves subconsciously. When we think about ourselves, we draw on a vast reservoir of information about the people and the events, what we could call the elements of our lives. Well, it must seem like chaos at the level of subconscious thinking, the level at which we think of everything that we are experiencing now and that we have ever experienced all at once. In order to deal with this seeming chaos, this potential chaos, in order to counteract chaotic thinking, we take a topic and simplify it. So at some level of her mind, whether consciously or subconsciously, Ellen Montgomery considers her relationship with her two parents, her mother and her father, in the thought-simplifying form of folk tales. Now, in reading these folk tales of the mother and the father, and realizing that every word is a thought in the mind of the main character of this novel, Ellen Montgomery, a reader might ask himself or herself just exactly what is the purpose of these folk tales. Presumably all the information is accurate, though I suppose we readers could ask what motive in the mind of Ellen Montgomery what motive she might have in her mind to distort or change the facts. We could also ask how much of the folktale in each case consists of information and how much of the folktale consists of interpretation. As we overhear the main character thinking, we readers learn that Ellen Montgomery's mother died when she was less than 2 years old. So it's obvious that the thoughts of the mother are not thoughts that the mother told her daughter about at a later age, but are reconstructions, creations in the mind of the adult main character about what her mother was thinking when the main character was less than 2 years old. In the case of her father, we readers learn as we overhear the thoughts of the main character that she followed her father out west and lived with her father and his second wife for a while before moving back to Prince Edward Island. So we have choices here as readers. We can assume, number one, that the father told Ellen Montgomery what he was thinking when she was less than 2 years old. Or number two, we can conclude that he didn't tell her what he was thinking at all. Or number three, that he told her something quite different from what we find in the folktale. So she is remembering, or she's imagining, the folktale of her father, or perhaps she's blending elements of the two, memory and imagination. Now, a long time ago, I paid a professional reader to read one of my early novels. Actually, it was my second novel, Jumbo, and here it is. Jumbo, a novel by John Passfield. And he gave me a piece of advice. He said that when anyone in a novel gives an opinion, the author should always be sure to include information in the novel that allows the reader to evaluate that opinion for accuracy. Well, I didn't respond to his advice except to thank him for it, but I rejected his advice completely. His advice, rejected by me, helped me to clarify the kind of novel that I wanted to write. I did not want to write a novel in which an author, or his surrogate, a narrator, would stifle a reader's speculative imagination by presenting conclusions. I wanted to write the kind of novel which presents itself as life presents itself, as something about which the reader is invited to think, about which the reader is invited to speculate, about which the reader is invited to come to his or her own conclusions. And that's the kind of novel and novella I've been writing ever since. Okay, now, this is my novel, Ellen Montgomery, I Gave You Life. It's available on Amazon. It's also available at my publisher's website, rocksmillspress.com, rocksmillspress.com, and at my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. There's 2 books which you can access for free by clicking on the cover icon. One is my planning notebook in which I planned and wrote the novel, and the other is my reflective journal in which I reflected on so many aspects of life itself, I guess you could say, certainly novel writing and characters and the relationship of authors and characters and so on, but also just how people imagine things in their minds, even if they're not writers, not authors. So have a look at those 2 books if you're interested in any of those topics. Lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video.